Do the American people have a right to vote or a duty? Now, the difference may seem minor, but according to a proposed bill in Connecticut, it's the difference between whether or not you can be fined for not voting. So we'll discuss that next on the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from a long through line of everyday Americans.
Hello once again, everyday Americans. Paul Engel here with the Constitution Study. This is where we read and study the Constitution. It's where we teach the rising generation to be free. I'm glad you could join me. I ask you to share these messages. If you live in Connecticut, this is important to you. If you don't live in Connecticut, well, it may be important to you one day, but it's important that we understand our rights and how to defend and assert them. So please head over to the website, constitutionstudy.com, find this video, find the article that goes with it, and share it. Read it, share it. It's free for you to use. Hey, click the book. I'll send you a free copy of my book, Reading the Constitution in 30 Days. You can sign up for the newsletter. I only send it out once a month, but you can check the box to get my articles delivered directly to you when they are released. No worries about algorithms or social media getting in the way. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about a bill I found in the state of Connecticut that I really think should worry everyone. When I first heard about the bill State Senator Haskell proposed in the Connecticut General Assembly, well, part of me wondered if someone was pulling my leg. But as I read the bill titled An Act Concerning Universal Civic Duty Voting, I believe it's a misguided attempt to get people to engage in the voting process. Now, from the statement of purpose of this bill, quote, to make several changes designed to institute universal civic duty voting. So unlike a lot of other legislation I read, this one doesn't really describe why it should be enacted. All that is stated is the purpose is to institute a universal civic duty to vote. Now, those of you who follow the Constitution Study know I'm a stickler for words. Most of us are familiar with our right to vote, but what Senator Haskell wants to do is create a civic duty to vote. Why is the distinction between a right and a duty so important, especially in regards to voting? Well, from Webster's 1828 dictionary, we find that a right is, quote, a just claim, immunity, or privilege. See, a right is a just claim of either immunity or privilege. Your right to vote means you have a just claim to the ability to vote. Not only must the state provide the opportunity to vote, they have the duty to ensure that the votes tallied are not corrupted by those who do not have the just claim to do so. In other words, it's the government's responsibility to ensure that only those who can legally vote are allowed to do so. In other words, our right to vote places a duty on the government. But do the American people have a legally binding civic duty to vote? Well, again, from Webster's 1828 dictionary, duty is defined as that which a person owes to another, that which a person is bound by any natural, moral, or legal obligation to pay, do, or perform. So, do you owe your fellow citizens an obligation to vote? Well, let's start with the understanding of why we vote. From Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States, we read, quote, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government. So first we need to recognize that the United States has a republican form of government and must guarantee that each of the states have a republican form of government as well. What is a republic? Back to Webster's 1828, a republic is, quote, a commonwealth, a state in which the exercise of sovereign power is lodged in representatives elected by the people. So the sovereign power of the people, you and me, is exercised by representatives we elect to office. We choose these representatives, these servants, these employees of the people by voting in elections. A vote is, quote, to choose by suffrage, to elect by some expression of will, as the citizens voted their candidate into office with little opposition. Now, since those representatives elected will exercise the sovereign power of the people they represent, I would say we have a moral obligation to participate in that choice. But does that mean we have a legal obligation to do so? See, from the Connecticut bill, quote, that Title IX of the General Statutes be amended to provide that, 1, At the 2024 state election and each state election thereafter, all qualified electors shall either cast a ballot or provide a valid reason for not casting a ballot. Now, most Americans want their elections to be free, fair, and transparent. For an election to be free from possible influence or coercion, the voting must be secret. Section 5 of the 6th article of the Connecticut Constitution reads, quote, "The right of secret voting shall be preserved." If I have a right to vote, is it not implied that I have a right not to vote? See, while the government has a duty to keep a list of eligible voters, does it have the right to place the duty to vote on those citizens? Now, while I'm not an expert in the Connecticut Constitution, I have found no language that grants the government of the state of Connecticut the authority to place such a duty upon its citizens. Reading from the bill, quote, "Following the 2024 election and each state election thereafter, A, the Secretary of State shall mail to all qualified electors who did not cast a ballot at the most recent state election a form inquiring as to why such elector did not cast a ballot, which form shall advise the valid reasons for not casting a ballot, including travel, illness, conscientious objection, or such other reason as the Secretary may prescribe, and B, failure to respond to such form with a valid reason shall result in a fine of $20 paid to the office of the Secretary of State." Now, while the legislation does not say how the Secretary of State will determine who has cast a ballot and who has not, I think it's pretty obvious that this will be done by checking the list of registered voters with those who actually cast a vote. Of course, recent reports about the state of these voter rolls seems to show that they're about as accurate as a broken clock. Reports of people receiving multiple mail-in ballots for previous residents and issues with voters not being allowed to vote in person because the government claims they voted by mail when they didn't are just a few of the reasons not to trust the state of Connecticut can actually determine whether or not someone voted. Furthermore, Senator Haskell is proposing that the Secretary of State should have the power to decide if the reason you chose not to vote is valid. And if the Secretary of State isn't satisfied with your reason, you get a $20 fine. Pay to the office that gets to decide if your reason is valid or not. Doesn't anyone in Hartford see the conflict of interest? Has anyone been watching the dissension between the parties? Does anyone really believe that some political actor won't abuse this for their own party's gain? If not today, certainly tomorrow. Quote, "Which fine shall not be increased through penalty, fees, or accrued interest, not be the basis for criminal enforcement or denial of government services or benefits, and be directed to the State Elections Enforcement Commission for deposit in the Citizens Elections Fund, except that an elector may perform 2 hours of community service for a Connecticut-based nonprofit organization if such elector is unable to pay such fine." Now, while this legislation doesn't put any real teeth into the fine, does anyone believe that would not change in the future? So at least for now, that fine would not accrue penalties or interest or be criminally enforced. If you cannot pay the fine, you can work it off at a government-approved organization. Oh, joy. Quote, "1 month prior to the 2024 state election, the Secretary of State shall mail to all qualified electors a notice that A, explains the changes that will take effect beginning at the 2024 state election, as described herein. B, includes a statement that each qualified elector will be required to either cast a ballot with the option to leave such ballot blank or provide a valid reason for not casting a ballot." So this legislation would allow someone to simply submit a blank ballot, but that seems small compensation for the theft of liberty that Senator Haskell is proposing. Now, I understand the desire for everyone to fulfill their moral and civic duty to participate in the selection of those who will exercise their sovereign power. While many of us may not be happy with the eventual choice, I find it quite hypocritical for those who have decided to let others choose for them to complain about the eventual choice. Would your vote have made a difference between who eventually assumed the office? Maybe yes, maybe no. But that does not absolve you of the consequences of your decision to let others choose. The fact that your decision has an impact on others does not give them the authority to compel you to vote. This is another example of how our lack of knowledge and understanding regarding our state and national constitutions leads to an inversion of power and eventually tyranny. You see, the Connecticut Constitution states that, quote, All political power is inherent in the people, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their benefit. Now, political is defined as an adjective pertaining to policy or to civil government and its administration. Well, if all power is inherent in the people, doesn't that include the power not to participate? What Senator Haskell is claiming is that the state has the authority to dictate to people how they will exercise their political power. Literally, it is the creation of the people telling the people they no longer have inherent political power. The state does. Because if the state does not like how or why you exercise your power, they will fine you. In short, this would be the state claiming that the people serve it rather than the other way around. What most pundits and politicians won't tell you is that this legislation is an exercise in tyranny and oppression. As Noah Webster wrote in his 1828 dictionary, quote, "Civil liberty is a liberty of men in a state of society or natural liberty so far only abridged and restrained as is necessary and expedient for the safety and interests of society, state, or nation. A restraint of natural liberty not necessary or expedient for the public is tyranny or oppression. The people of the state of Connecticut did not grant their creation, namely the government of Connecticut, the authority to force people to vote. That means this is an attempt at a blatant usurpation of power by some in Hartford. Since this legislation would not only abridge the liberty of the people of Connecticut and does so for reasons other than are necessary and expedient for the public, it is by definition an act of tyranny and oppression. By depriving the citizens of the state of Connecticut their liberty to not participate in elections and doing so without due process of law, it would be a violation of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States as well. Quote, "Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law." No matter the reasons or justifications Senator Haskell may provide for this legislation, anyone who votes for it has violated their oath to support the constitutions of both the state of Connecticut and the United States. They will have shown themselves to be tyrants and despots and should be removed from office and banned from ever holding office again. If the citizens of Connecticut wish to be servants of princes and princesses in Hartford, well, that is their choice. Just don't expect the rest of the Union to come charging to the rescue when this all goes horribly wrong. So that's what's going on in Connecticut. Suddenly we have the servants of the people dictating to the people that they must vote. Now again, I think voting is important. I think when we disconnect, when we give others the authority to choose for us, we diminish the possibilities. We lose control of our government. But is that the same as me having the authority to tell you that you have to vote? And while today it's a $20 fine that doesn't really seem to have any enforcement, do we really think that won't change tomorrow? Do you trust a government that will usurp your liberty to participate or not participate in voting to not increase the penalties and punishment for your lack of willingness to do so? This is one of those quiet little usurpations that sometimes just go under the radar. But that's why we're here. See, now if you live in Connecticut, hopefully you will contact your representative and tell them, ain't no way, buddy. This is a violation of your oath of office, and if you go through with supporting this, well, we'll just have to use our right to vote someone else into office. And for those of us in the other 49 states, we should look to Connecticut. Is that because Connecticut is some bellwether for the nation? No. But if it works in Connecticut, don't you think someone else will try it? Maybe Massachusetts or New York or New Jersey. Then eventually California and the rest of the states. If we're willing to stand by while other states usurp the power of their citizens, who's going to stand by us when the state comes after us? If we're willing to stand by while the state of Connecticut goes after its citizens, who's going to stand with us when our states come after us? This is why we need to focus local. You should, in fact, if you live in Connecticut, yes, you should contact your state representative. You should also contact your county election commission. Inform them of the violation of Connecticut Constitution that this legislation would be. Demand that they refuse to comply with an illegal law. Make your voice heard. Don't be violent, but make your voice heard. It doesn't take all of us. It actually only takes about 2-3% of the people to really make a difference in what goes on. So again, if you're in Connecticut, I wish you the best. I'll keep an eye on this. Contact me. Let me know what you're doing. Let me know how it's going. If you've contacted someone, comment. Let us know. Participate. Hey, go to Constitution Scholars. Register for your free account. Join the Connecticut group, and let's discuss it in the Connecticut group. You know, that's part of the reason why Scholars is set up the way it is, so these state issues can be discussed by other people in the state that are interested in the Constitution. And if you don't live in Connecticut, well, maybe you want to check and see if something like this is going on in your state. But I thank you for your time. I've enjoyed spending some time talking with you. I hope you'll go to Constitution Study and Constitution Scholars, that you'll check out these programs, that you'll find out what we're doing, that you'll not only watch these videos, but you'll share them with others, and that you'll come back here the next time to the Constitution Study.
There's one thing you have to know wherever you make your stand. Came from